You know, the only other man we've ever done was Gary Vee.
Really?
Yeah,
We
right?
did-
Oh,
we
no,
had
we did
Colton.
Colton Underwood, and we did Lewis Howes and Ed Milet, so I'm lying about that. So we did,
So-
It's been a long time since we had a man.
yeah,
maybe since
I-
pre-pandemic.
It's such a pleasure.
We're so excited
And
to have
intimidating as hell.
No,
Yeah.
because a lot of men are very egocentric,
Right.
and that's really not good for our vibe over here.
No, and I don't think that that's particularly good for anywhere.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree with you on that one. But it's common when two women walk into the room that's what happens.
Yep.
Just so you know. So you reached out to us because you have a new book and it's doing amazing and it's juicy. And I have heard people on the radio crying because of the response. Like, what is that?
So the response, well, you don't know what the response is going to be, and I think that was like that was the crazy part of it, is that you sit down and you spend so long writing a bloody book.
Yeah, you do.
You spend 2 years, and I cried like every day writing the book. And you don't know if you're going to get to the end of it, and then by the time it's released, you're almost detached from it because you've done so much little tiny bits of work to it that it's no longer. I had no emotional attachment to it, and then the book was released, and it really meant a lot to a lot of people, and I sort of wanted it to hit one person, because I talk a lot about grief, and I talk a lot about body issues, and I talk a lot about self-harm, and I talk a lot about all this stuff, and it's just not stuff that I don't think men talk a whole lot about.
Sure.
I don't think men in my position talk a whole lot about. And I was as hard on myself that I was sort of on anybody else in my story. And I think that was the mandate going into it, was that I wasn't going to filter what was actually true. And I think it meant a lot to people, especially, the mistakes you make when you're going through a lot of things in life, like grief. Like, I really screwed up the way I handled my dad dying. Like, I really did. And
Can
it
you
haunts
screw that
me.
up? But
Are there rules for that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there? You think there are rules?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. The way that I dealt with it was when he was dying. I in some kind of weird morbid way, I killed him off before he was actually dead. I picked a point where I had said a goodbye to him while he was still alive, and then I wanted to just get on with the grieving already. And so I sort of robbed him of those last couple of months of the two of us being able to say goodbye to each other, because I was already moving on with life. And then my mom would be like, God, all your dad wants you to do is just call him. And I'm like, yeah, I'll call him tomorrow. And I never did. Right. And so,
Wow.
so
Why did you do that?
because it hurt too much. And I felt so much guilt when my dad was dying, because I was young. And when he was alive, I was sort of always on my way to becoming something, and I hadn't really become anything yet, and I knew that when he was going to die, he wasn't going to be around to sort of see his hard work pay off.
Right.
And I took that on as guilt, and I knew that he was never going to sort of be able to walk me down the aisle. He was never going to be a grandfather. He was never going to do all this stuff, and so I felt that I was just too slow. And so instead of me grieving or going through it with him, I took it all on as guilt. And then
How
I just
old were you?
attached myself. I was my late 26.
I mean,
think.
was your mom mad at you?
No, I mean, she was about to lose the love of her life, right? So I don't think that she had a lot of time, but she begged me to call him. And I never did. I'd walk in the room and my brother would be on the phone with him. And the only time I talked to my dad is when my brother would hand me the phone, right? And so I had to go through all the grieving stuff afterwards. And that's the real hard part.
But as a parent, do you see it differently when you became a parent, or no?
Everything changed when I became a parent.
I was going to say, because you can see it from your kid's perspective now, and you
Yeah.
think your dad maybe saw it from a kid's perspective, because as a parent,
Yeah.
you kind of understand your kids better than they understand themselves until they get to a certain point, and that behavior probably wasn't something that was new for your parents to see. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was probably something
Yeah.
they might have not predicted, but
But they weren't like, he's just being a dick out of nowhere.
No, but I had like all of this stuff that led up to that. Like, I had a lot of years where, like, I found out, years and years later that I was molested in a closet when I was like 9, and that messed me up.
You didn't remember that?
No, like, I always I remembered it happening, but it wasn't until years later when I realized it shouldn't have.
Right.
right? Like
Yes.
it was almost like it was that sort of day was almost like it was a story that was told to me rather than one I was sort of starring in, right? Like it was always a memory, but I was so detached from it that nothing made sense to me until years later, and then I just went on a tear when I was younger with a lot of self-harm and not knowing why I was doing that and why I would burn myself for the amount of years that I did, because I didn't know. When you're young and you sort of don't have an outlet to talk to anybody, you don't know if you're like fucked up or if you're normal.
Yeah.
Right? Like
I think
didn't
that's
know.
most of, and I think though even people who haven't had that experience feel that way.
Yeah.
Like they don't know. That's really adolescence. Is like you don't know. Is this normal? Is this not normal? And you're right. A lot of men and boys don't talk about anything, nothing from their lives. Right? It's just forward, forward, forward. So that's. How did you uncover that, or is that in the book? Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all in the book, and listen, like uncovering it is difficult, like because you don't know what needs to be uncovered. Like I went to therapy, and I screwed that up because I wasn't even ready for therapy because I felt like I had to perform for my therapist.
Oh my God.
Where I felt like I wanted to impress them, and I wanted to seem therapy worthy, but not too much of a project. Right, so I wasn't even honest in the first time I went to therapy because I didn't know how to be. I didn't know how to have those kind of conversations to talk about feelings. So I thought I would tell a doctor what I thought a doctor would want to hear.
Wow.
Right, and then what winds up happening is when you're sort of a young man, there's devastating things that somebody can say to you. One thing that's devastating is when somebody looks at you and tells you that you're fucked up. Right, the thing that hurts more when you're a young man is when somebody looks at you and tells you that you're normal, because you just need somebody to tell you that there's something wrong, because if there's something wrong you can fix it.
Wow.
Right, and so I went through all of this stuff, and all of this stuff was happening as my dad was dying.
Oh
right?
my. So we have 4 boys
Yeah.
between the 2 of us, and we're so focused on the girls. So much of us is because the girls are very vocal and
Sure.
verbal, and I'm sure your daughter takes the attention, right? Girls have a tendency to take it. Like they're like, I'm here, me.
It's interesting. My kid is more like me than she is like her mom.
Wow.
Yeah. She's reserved.
You're so like open and raw about all of these really personal things, and even just like your journey and therapy. Were you like that before the book, or did the book like help it all come out?
So I would write the book. Like Catherine and I have been together for I think like 17 years now, but with a tiny little blip at the very beginning. And when I was writing the book, I wrote the entire book on the couch beside her while she and Roxy was knitting, Catherine was watching whatever, reading a book, and I had my computer on my lap. And as soon as I finished a chapter, I would pick the computer up and I'd be like, do you have 15 minutes? And she's like, yeah. And I'd put the computer on her lap and she would read a chapter as I wrote it. And I would say that 80% of the sort of like bombs in this book, she had no idea existed.
What?
Whoa.
None. So she found out about all of this when I was writing the
Wait,
book.
that's crazy.
Yeah, because I was just not an open person. I was a loving person, and we had a great relationship, and we were wonderful parents. And when the first time Catherine saw me cry, she was so unbelievably blown away by it, and she was encouraging of it. She was like, oh my God, more of this, more of this, more of this, because I hadn't cried. Like I always like say in the book that, I don't remember the last time I cried, but I remember every time I should have and didn't.
Wow.
Right? And then so when we had Roxy, when I became a dad, is when I started crying. And I cry, like I don't cry every day, but I almost cry every day. And it's beautiful when it happens. Like
Every
love
day.
it. Like there's always something in a day. There's always something in a day that will hit me where I'm just like, where I have to hold back tears.
Like happy.
Happy tears. Absolutely happy tears.
And you were not like that?
No, not at all. I never, like zero. There was none of that existed until I became a dad. And then once I became a dad, that sort of all
Like overwhelming
changed.
love, or
I love everything, right? Like I mean, I don't love everything, but I'm emotional now. Where I was never emotional, because I went through a period where I had such a disconnect between my world, like the world, and my body, and I needed them to sort of reconvene into one thing, because I was the person who would just take things and add them to the stack. And I grew up thinking that, the thing that makes us unique was how much we could handle.
Yep.
When the reality is the thing that makes us unique is what we can offer. And it was as soon as I realized that, right? That's sort of when I realized that, you know, when I lost my dad, I always say that the world lost a great dad, and I didn't know how to reconcile with that. But the day that I became a dad, I realized that I couldn't bring my dad back, but I could fill his space, and so I was just going to be a goddamn good dad, and that was the sort of best way to honor my dad and sort of fill that space that he had left. Right, and so all that hit me when we had a kid, and everything changed. Like, I know parenthood and all that stuff, it changes you, but like everything in every aspect of my life changed. I wouldn't have been able to do the show that we do if we didn't have a kid, because we got the show in like August 2009.
He means the Roz and Mocha show on Kiss 92.5. And can the American listeners get it?
Yeah, you can. On any app, you can download the podcast.
And they have a podcast too, and they're hilarious, and all the kids love it. It's a great show.
But I wouldn't have been able to do anything. I would have nothing if we didn't have.
Okay, I want to take a quick break, and then I need to ask why. Why do you think you would have nothing?
Because I was going in a direction that was a very unhealthy way of living, and for me, I need accountability in life, and that's why I always live with my brother. I've lived with my brother my entire life.
I was going to ask you that.
With the exception of one year when I went to college and then I moved to New York for a little while. But he's in his 50s now. I'm in my late 40s. We still live together. He and his wife live upstairs in the big house that we have. The three of us live on the sort of main floor and the lower floor, and it's just always been that way.
They're like that. That's our dream. See,
is he your best friend?
My brother's my best friend. Yeah, 100%. But I need accountability, and I know that about myself. I couldn't be on my own, and then when I became a dad, it was just a different kind of accountability, where everything I do now is I'm like the third in line for every single thing I do, just because that's the only way I can function. And it may be sort of old school to be like the dad, the provider, all this stuff, but that's the only way I can function in life.
Our vibe is you do what's right for you, and if you can figure that out, you're winning, because most people are trying to figure out what works for them, and that's the bigger challenge than actually having an old school or new school way of thinking, right? Is most people are stumbling around.
Do you ever find that your like openness and just like these things just kind of fall out of your mouth that are really personal and like hard to hear, that people around you ever feel like uncomfortable with that openness?
Always.
Like I feel it right now. Like
you feel uncomfortable?
Yeah, I don't feel. It's not that I feel uncomfortable. I just feel like it's like everything that you've been through and that you've worked through so many things makes me think I'm like I don't even want to. I don't want to deal with that stuff that you had to deal with. It sounds like it was so much.
No, I don't want to hear anymore. I'm uncomfortable about your life. If we could stop this, this is not good for me.
So the first thing that I knew when I was writing this book was I knew that it was going to end with the proposal.
Yes,
right?
I've read a few chapters. I didn't read the whole book because we also like to come at it from a place of not knowing, because then we can ask for the people honest questions rather than leading questions.
Good one for not doing your homework.
No, but I read the tattoo. Like when you went back to Catherine and she was pregnant, wasn't going to tell you, and you both had the same tattoo on the same finger. And that is weird.
It was weird. It was weird. And we had split up. So the story was that we were together, and I was not ready for any sort of commitment. And we had been together for even years at this point. And I was just so standoffish for years. And she just knew that she didn't need to work on me. I just needed to work on me.
How old are you at this time?
At this point, I was 30, I guess, somewhere around there.
So 26 to 30 were like pretty intense years.
The worst.
Okay. And she's with you during this time?
She's with me when I'm at, no, this is early on. So I'm about 32 at this point, 32, 33.
Okay.
And we split up because I knew that I had started working on Entertainment Tonight Canada, and I was traveling all over the world, and I sort of started to really enjoy this kind of like fake life that you could have, right? And it's a really sort of intoxicating thing, free clothes, and you're on television. And all this stuff.
Everyone knows you.
Yeah. It's very intoxicating. But you could also be an incredible phony, right? And I found it easier to not be a real person than to be I found being a real person was very difficult.
Yes.
And Catherine started to sort of, unearthed this realness in me that I could see her doing, and I was greatly appreciative of it, but I was also terrified. And so I left. I left her, and we had split up for about 6 months. And I got into a terrible relationship after that with somebody who was just destined to hurt me, and I let it happen, and I encouraged it, and I went into this toxic relationship.
All within those 6 months?
All within 6 months.
Wow.
She must have been like, fuck you.
So,
did she know that you were dating?
She knew.
Because social media is a thing now. But are you not?
No,
you never did social.
This was before that.
Okay.
But I told her. I just told her.
Why?
Like, I told her.
Well, they were broken up.
We were
I know,
broken
but
up.
you don't call the person that loves you and tell them you're with
Yeah,
someone.
I know.
Especially when you've been together for years,
Yeah.
and she's pregnant, but he doesn't
no,
know
she
it.
wasn't pregnant yet. She wasn't pregnant yet.
Okay,
So
thank
what
God.
happened? So what happened was that I broke off this relationship, and then I called Catherine, and I was like, "Can I come over?" And she was like, "Yes." And I walked in, and it wasn't. She didn't sort of. There was no open arms. There was. She looked more at me of like when a runaway comes back home after you swore that
Like
you could
pity,
make it on your
just
own,
like
or somebody who got out of rehab after one relapse, where I
Oh.
swear it's never going to happen again. There was caution,
Yeah,
like
okay.
extreme caution. And we went in. She was living in a new apartment, and she went in. She sat me in, and she put me on the couch, and I was like, okay, so here's what's going to happen: is, tell her everything that happened. And I was just, the words were just sort of out of my mouth, and my hand was on her hand, and I looked down at my finger because I had just got a tattoo on my hand that was a little tiny heart on the inside of my middle finger on my left hand. And I looked down, and I was like, what is that? She's like, what is what? And I'm like, that on your finger. And she's like, oh, it's a tattoo. And I'm like, when did you get that? Because it was the exact same tattoo as mine. And I was like, when did you get that? She's like, 2 months ago. When did you get yours? And I was like, 2 months ago.
Oh
So
my
when we
God.
were split, we both independently went and got the exact same tattoo in the exact same spot at the exact same time, not
That's
knowing that the other
crazy.
person had.
Yeah.
Right? And then so I spent the night, and then a week later she came over to the house, and I invited her over, and I was just like, hey, listen, I need you to please hear me out and just sit down on the couch, and I'm going to stand here, and I'm going to tell you everything that I need to tell you. And I just, I poured everything out, and I had said that what I realized was that, when, like my dad, the whole thing with my dad just screwed me up, and I said, listen, I realize now that when it is my last day, and there's going to be somebody there who's going to say goodnight to me for the last time, the only person I want that to be is you. And it's
Wow.
you and only will ever be you.
Wow.
And then she looked at me and went, good, because I'm pregnant.
Fuck.
Right? Yeah. And then I dropped down on my knees and I started crying.
Did
and
she
then
feel the same in that
she
moment?
Did, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And she's just like, you just fucked off for 6 months, but here we go.
Yeah, but she knew why though, right?
That's
Like,
really
she
an
knew-
evolved
she knew
human, just so
why.
you know.
Yeah.
That's
I agree.
her. That's
Yes.
great. That's very mature.
I
Especially
fully-
at 30 something, you're like, that's young. You know what I mean?
She was in her 20s. There's 10 years between us.
Wow.
So I watched the YouTube video, which was so adorable and sweet and everything. And you say that like everything you give, like everything. Catherine is everything.
Yes, she is. Yes, everything.
That's like we're married, not to each
Yeah.
other. But we
Giggle,
have
giggle,
husbands.
giggle. Giggle.
And when I heard you talking about her in that way, and we didn't get to hear her talk back about you, so I don't know if she says the same thing. I'm assuming it's a yes.
Yeah, it's a yes.
I
Yeah.
was
I'm not
laying-
an easy guy to live with though, but yes.
Yeah.
I was laying beside my husband, who I love, and I was just like, I don't feel that way. Like I don't feel like he's my everything, and I'm like, all of that. Are you guys soulmates? Do you need each other? Like, what makes that so intense, that relationship, or the way that you feel about her?
It's a really good question. What makes it so intense? And I don't really have a whole lot to compare it to, because I had the majority of relationships that I have had in my life where soft bed to climb in, warm body to climb on. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the vast majority of the relationships that I've had. And then I was married, so I knew what that felt like before. And then I've had all sorts of different relationships, but with Catherine, she's the only person that I feel the ability to breathe when I'm around her. I never felt like I could fully breathe when I was with somebody. I always felt that there was some sort of constraint, that there was something that was just where it was all going to go wrong. Like I'm a pessimist in that way, where I would just be with them and I'm like, God, when is this all going to go to hell? Like, it feels really good right now, but I know that I'm going to fuck it all up. And with Catherine, I never felt that way. And she's the type of person who is just so genuinely wonderful. And I think that Catherine's greatest superpower is, more than anybody I've ever met in my life, is she recognizes when somebody else in her life needs a win. And when she sees it, she makes sure that they get a win that
Wow.
day. And so she has this uncanny ability with me to not, like, I don't freak out really anymore. I don't stress anymore. And it's just, and it's her, and I'm not,
It's also you.
And it's, yeah.
I mean, because you control, you have control over you.
I do have control over me, but
She's mirrored how to be calm.
Talking to me is like a thing. Like, I can't have somebody rationalize my ridiculous, emotions, because that will just drive me more crazy, right? Like, if I'm really, like, riled up about something, you can't look at me and go, oh, it's gonna be fine. I'm like, no, like, that pisses me off.
Yeah.
Right. So she knows, like, that, she needs to let me be, like, crazy every now and then it just sort of goes away. But she doesn't rationalize, like, or make it all about her or anything like this, like, when I'm sort of in those moments. And then what that taught me to do was, I do the same thing with her now, right? Where I'm so much more receptive to, like, emotions than in a relationship than I ever have been, and it's only because I'm just reflecting what she puts on me.
Wait, we have to take a quick break, and I have to ask a mom question. Okay, I have to take a quick break. So your mom read the book?
My mom did, yes.
And your mom, how did she? Was there any bombs in there for her?
Most. My mom didn't know. My mom didn't know how I felt when my dad was dying. My mom didn't know that I was about the sexual assault. My mom didn't know that I hurt, that I burned myself for.
That would kill. That would kill.
It did.
Kill as a mother.
It did. It did. And her. But the thing that I had to tell her was, because she read the book, and especially all the years where I was still living at home, where I would hurt myself, and she took it personally, because she was like, how did I not see that?
Yeah.
How did I not know that there was a problem? And then the thing that my answer to her was, I didn't even know there was a problem. And if I didn't know there was a problem, how were you supposed to know there was a problem? Because I didn't know. I didn't know what I was doing was wrong. Like, I didn't know.
I think as a mom, though, you feel like you should know.
Yeah.
Or as a parent, you're like, how did she, and she never knew about the sexual assault until
the book, she read it.
And that was the first time.
Yeah.
And did she, that would have been a big, huge bomb for any mom to hear, because especially at 9, you would want to be in and around, like, right, because that would have changed your life at that moment, and you would have gone home a different person without anybody knowing. And unfortunately, that is a conversation for a lot of people that they do have to face, and a lot of kids don't get to express it because they don't know how to. When you're 9, you don't have the words to say what happened, right?
No.
So as a mom, what do you think a mom could have, or what do you think someone could have done to help you during that time? Or was there no help that anyone could have done during that time?
So I think it's different if you're made aware of something, right? Like I said, that day happened, and it happened, and then 10 minutes later we were back downstairs doing normal kid stuff, right? It was as if nothing had happened.
Yeah.
And so if I showed any signs that there was any sort of trauma, or that this had affected me in any way, that I was carrying towards life. But the problem is that what that day did was just accelerated me in the growing up process, which was expected, because I was 6 foot in grade 8.
Wow.
So people always treated me like somebody who could handle more than what a kid my age should be able to handle, because I seemed like I was so much more mature. Right, I lost my virginity when I was 13.
Yeah.
And my dad waited outside for me in the car while I was in her house. Right, like all of this stuff, and then she left because the last conversation I had, like, she was 19 and I was 13, and I lied because I could pass for 17, and that was the sort of first relationship that I ever had. And the last.
So your dad just kind of thought you were having a play date.
He thought I was having a play date. Right?
You sure were.
And I was in there, and her and her girlfriend were doing mounds of cocaine.
Oh.
And my dad was, like, hanging outside, and he thought we were in there playing ping pong in the basement, and her mom and dad were home because I lied, because I lied to everybody, and then her face exploded because of too much cocaine, and we went upstairs and had sex, and then the last conversation that I ever had with her, and then eventually my parents found out all this stuff, and then she found out that I was lying.
Oh,
and
shit.
that I wasn't 17 and I was actually 13.
Shit.
Still didn't break up with me.
Oh my
Continued the relationship.
God.
And then the last conversation that I had with her was, we had never talked about pregnancy or anything like that, and the last conversation that I had with her was, if she ever got pregnant, what we would do. And then she looked at me and said, don't worry, you would never know. I would just disappear. I would never put that on you because I was 13. And then one day she was just gone. She just vanished. And I don't know whether that is, she just realized that, you know, being with a 13-year-old was not cool when you're 19. Or if she did get pregnant. And I will never know. But I will say that most people from my past, when you start doing TV shows and radio shows and everything
Come up.
else, have reached out. Everybody has reached out. She's one of 2 people in my past that have never reached out. But that's a hard thing to do, right? You know, it's a hard thing to admit that you're the woman that at 19 you were sleeping with a 13-year-old.
Well, illegal too.
Yeah.
Like especially today.
You've never found her on like Facebook?
She's got a very common name. Like very common name.
Do you think that if the sexual assault hadn't happened, your life would have been on a different path?
Yes.
That's hard to reckon with too.
Yes. Slightly different. You know, the one thing that I don't think would have changed was sexualizing young men isn't something that a lot of people talk about. Mm-hmm. We talk about sexualizing young women and how dangerous that is and how damaging it is. And we all do this thing as parents. Moms are far more active in the battle than dads are. You know what I mean? You shut it down when you see it, right? But sexualizing young men, especially when I was young, in the sort of like mid 80s, was like, it was totally normal for a woman when I was 12, for a woman who was 30, to be like, you know, come back when you're 18, right? Like that kind of thing, you know, and it was normal. I had friends, older sisters, that I would watch them change in the pool house because they'd be like, hey, you want to see this?
Oh my!
Right? Like when you're a kid, it was like it was a lawless sort of like, you know, underage sexual society, and you know, and I thought it was cool, and I never realized how damaging stuff like that is. So all of that sort of set me up for, you know, it was a sort of wild youth into adolescence to a very reckless period in my 20s, but all of that led up to that. And it's stuff we don't talk about. I could never have a conversation with somebody being like, I feel like I was just sexualized inappropriately. Nobody would have that conversation with me.
No.
Nobody
because really we high five boys for doing stuff. You are like, way to go, buddy. You know, like, yeah, you're gonna go sleep over. We don't joke now, but we often say to parents who don't have teenagers that like gender doesn't matter anymore. Like they could sleep over at girls and they're doing the same things that they'd be doing at a boys. Like it's now a new world where we all have to be open about talking about sexuality, your body, consent, what that feels like, what you don't, and it's kind of a blessing we get to have those conversations, because hopefully when they have them earlier, then you know what's right and what's wrong, because I just don't think kids at 9 knew. Like you said, you didn't know. You could have stopped it if you knew this isn't okay. You know, you could have been like, actually, don't do that. No, thank you.
Yeah.
At 9.
No, because the thing is, when I grew up, is that you didn't say no to a grown-up.
Yeah.
Right? You don't talk back. You don't stand up for yourself. Like that didn't exist. Like it was discouraged, right? Standing up for yourself.
I think there's still a big narrative though that goes on like this, and I think it's so important you're talking about this, because I think a lot of dads don't think about their sons being a target in terms of that conversation that has to happen, because I think it has to come from males sometimes. Like I think it has to come from a male figure to talk to other males about you know, that conversation, because I don't know if they'd listen to us the same than if it came from a male. Do you think?
Like our sons?
Yeah, I'm not sure if a male sat them down and said, listen, this can happen. I don't know. I just think it's a
No, I think that would be really, really helpful.
I think it's so huge what you're doing is this What is the youngest age you would say could read your book?
18.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an 18.
I said,
16, 17 if they have somebody to ask questions to.
I feel like it's very helpful,
Right.
like because you kind of chronicle what you went through and how you got to where you were. And for a lot of people, they don't share that. You know, it's kind of I'm here now, and this is how you get there. But it's kind of like you lived it, and then you share the other end, and you're still kind of living through things, as you
Every
say,
day.
every day.
Yeah.
I feel like you're like, wrapping up like the book and like all the meaning, but I have to go back and ask a question from before.
Yes.
So with Catherine and saying that, she's just so everything to you.
Yeah.
We can't let it go.
Yeah.
I love
No,
it.
please.
She's like, just, I need to understand this.
Is it scary at all that you are giving like so much, not power, but like she's like the other half of you? Is it scary that like she could leave? I know you guys are in love and you're getting married and everything, but like what if she was gone? How would you be?
Died? Like, if
I
she
mean,
died?
she just goes. She abducted by aliens.
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
she leaves you.
Yeah. I don't think that she would. I would have
You don't
to.
think she would leave you?
No. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that she wouldn't leave me. But I think that Catherine, I don't think would just sort of independently leave me.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if I became someone who she could no longer live with, she would 100% leave, and she would just take Roxy. Like, that's just the way that it is. Her tolerance for.
And what would
things
be you in that time?
I would be
off the rails.
I would be off the rails. Yeah.
That's so
Because
scary.
you talk about addiction in your book,
Yeah.
and something you overcame.
Yeah. No, I was my addiction was weird. So I was addicted to opioids, but I didn't know I was addicted because when they put me on pills, it was in both my lungs collapsed in the 90s. And in the 90s, sort of like the conversation with opioids was that if you were in pain, there's no chance you can become addicted. And that's what the doctors told me. And then I went through a series of infections and everything else. And when they sent me home from the hospital, they sent me home with a pill bottle that was the size of like a beer can, a little bit wider. And they gave me hundreds of perks, but only now there was nobody there to make sure I took them on time or in any sort of regularity. And so for months, what I would do is I would fight through when I was actually in physical pain without pills. And I would save the pills for when I felt my best. Mm-hmm. And then I would just sort of ride it out. And then after the pills ran out, I was like, no more pills. That's cool, whatever. And then I got really sick. And then I had to take 2 weeks off work and sit and I was in my bedroom. And I was kicking an opioid addiction with like fucking Gatorade and Gravol, right? Not knowing why I was sick.
Wow.
And then I came out of it 2.5 weeks later, and I'd lost all this weight. I was 6'4", and I think I weighed 140 pounds, something like that. But I didn't know what it was. I just thought it was another thing from the surgeries and the infection and everything else. Had I known that it was the result of not doing pills anymore, I would have went to find something instead
different
of pills.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Wow.
Had I known it was addiction, I would have went to find something else that would have been the substitute for the pills.
I feel like you're so lucky
Yeah,
in
you
life.
are.
It's like you have your dad, someone up there is like guiding. We believe in, I don't know if you believe in that, but we believe in like, it's a lot of series of events that have taken you.
I say in the back, the last chapter in the book, where I'm not religious. I've never really listened to the universe, but I do believe in luck.
That's the universe.
And I've had a lot of lucky days, and I know when your luck changes, you just got to let it change, and you can't hang on to luck because it's probably going to go to somebody else who needs it a little bit more than you do that day.
Yeah.
And then you just wait your turn again for another lucky day. And that's sort of how I live, right? I have lucky days and unlucky days, but I think everybody does, and that's sort of the thing that keeps me a little bit grounded.
Shit, you're a really nice man to talk to, by the way. Like, you're very calming, no ego, no pervert. Like, it's because a lot of men are perverts. They look at you like they want to eat you, you know, and it's like a power dynamic the whole entire time.
Yeah.
You're not like that at all, which is lovely.
No, she's, you know what, I think that what you guys do is incredible. And when you started doing what you did, you knew that you were going to be the thing that inspired a lot of other women to do the thing that you guys do, which I think is wonderful. With anything that I've ever done, if I see somebody else sort of doing the same thing, I think it is wonderful that you're inspiring. But I think that what you guys do that is so different from what other people do is you point at the realities in life and the sort of pressure that builds up. And a lot of people can do that. A lot of people can talk about the truths and all of this stuff. But what they don't do is there's no valve on them. You guys release the pressure. You build the pressure, and then you release the pressure.
That's really nice.
And it only works when it's everything, because that can point to a million people who are really great at building the pressure, and then you're left feeling kind of gross. But you guys build it, and then you release it. And I think that that's the thing that makes the audience, that has the emotional attachment to the two of you that they have, is because they build it collectively, and then you are like, shh, and you release it collectively. I think that is the sort of brilliance. I think that is the brilliance of what you guys have created.
Oh, thank you.
Where do you do an audiobook?
I read this book, yeah.
I was going to say
that's how we're going to do it.
Yeah, because I think that for a lot of people in the car, because your voice is obviously amazing, so listening to you would be really, really, there's a lot of moms in there. So even if you don't know, if you're not from Toronto or Canada, you need to go. This is such an insightful book from a man's perspective, because there's not many out there like this.
Well, and it's also really important when we're raising men and boys to hear a perspective from a man who's been through things that they're going to go through, but hopefully they won't go through.
Would you have been scared to have a son? Different? Would you have been more nervous?
No, because we thought we were having a son.
Okay.
For a little while, when the first couple ultrasounds happened, we thought we were having a boy.
Okay.
But as soon as we had a girl, I was just like my heart.
You can tell you're a good girl, Dad.
Yeah, I was going to say that would have been, because sometimes when you have your own sex, it brings up you go through a lot of shit with, Because
I didn't have a sister either, right? So I never had there was never like a girl energy in the house, with the exception of my mom. My mom always had boy energy. There's always like my dad, my brother, and me, right? Wow. So there was no girl energy in the house. And then so with Catherine and Roxy, it's like, the girl energy is a sort of dominant energy in the house. And I've always felt more comfortable around women anyway. So I love being a part of that energy.
And we're gonna wrap it up, but I have one more question about your brother, because I feel like he was what did he do when he was watching you? Did he know was he watching you knowing, or was he
always living with you?
Like, what was his responses to you?
When he finished with the book, we cried, because when my dad died, I sort of stepped back, but he stepped up.
Aww.
And he sort of became that thing, because the thing that killed me the most was when my dad died. The thing that died with him was just that one person who's going to be proud of you no matter what.
Yeah.
And so my brother sort of really stepped into that position, and he's always the first person to be like, my God, I'm so proud of you. Like, he goes on, when the book came out, he was the first one that saw that it was, a #1 bestseller kind of thing, and he goes and he reads the Amazon reviews, and he writes me and tells me when there's a good one, and he's that, right? Like he's that sort of, because we both lost our dad together, and we went through it, and we went through it together, and there's moments where I sort of kind of step into our dad's thing a little bit, like I paid off our mortgage, I did all that stuff.
Yeah.
And just so he didn't have to have, we could save money, and then he and his wife could go on vacation, and all of this stuff, right? But he was the one that got rid. But when we first bought our house, I wasn't making any money, and he was the one that took out all the loans because I couldn't qualify, right? So he was the one that made sure we got a house, and I was the one that eventually, paid it off, right? So we're both this thing to each other, and we're just always there. We never take each other for granted, at all. And we've never fought about anything. My brother and I have just never.
Since you were little, super tight.
We were always two completely different people.
That's a parent's dream, by the way.
We've never fought about anything.
You're so lucky you have him and you have Catherine, and those relationships are
and
so
Mocha.
strong.
Yes,
I have to throw Mocha, because you're with him a lot during the day.
Yeah.
That's 3 really great people in your life that are with you all the time.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, you're lucky.
No, this was incredible.
Oh, well, I think we learned so much. I love conversations like this.
I'm really scared to read the book, though. I feel like I should prepare myself.
I'll read it to you, okay?
I had the reason why. So when the proposal happened in the book,
you let the last chapter is a proposal, and she did not know, because you kept doing fake endings.
Right? Yeah, Catherine had no idea that I was proposing in the end of the book. And I told, and when I sold the book, I sold it without the proposal. So the publishers didn't even know that there was going to be a proposal. When the books went out for review, nobody got the last chapter. Nobody anything knew that the proposal existed. Because the first line that I wrote when I sat down to write the book, because I needed to know how it was going to end. So the first line I wrote was, when you choose the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with. You're also choosing the person who's going to tell your stories when you're gone. And if you're lucky, you'll find somebody who only ever sees the best in you. And so I wrote that line as part of the proposal, and then I went back to the very beginning and I wrote the entire book. But I knew I was going to spoil it, so I released the proposal video before the book was actually released. Because I think it was cool.
Yeah.
But two, I needed people to know that there was a happy ending.
Yeah.
Because it's a
Right.
tough read,
Yeah.
right? And I knew that it was a tough read, and I knew that people were going to want to put it down, but they needed to know that there was a happy ending. Because I think
that's helpful.
happy endings matter, right?
I guess you have to propose to me.
Oh,
We should
I-
rewrite the
I-
book.
Our third book,
I know, I was thinking, I'm like, someone will tell you our good stories. I'm like, that's us. I mean, we got it now. We're doing okay.
You're gonna have to tell my stories, but I'm going first.
No, I know you
I
are.
was saying, what if Catherine goes first? Who's gonna tell me?
Yeah, no, I know, that's a problem.
Your brother can tell the
Yeah,
stories.
my brother.
Roxy, it'll go into Roxy.
He's got a book now. The book will tell the story.
And I
Stories
don't
happen.
even know. I don't know if Roxy's ever going to read the book, to be honest with you.
She will.
Oh.
I don't know.
I bet you she will.
Oh, is she
One day.
allowed?
No, not right now.
Oh, okay.
No,
oh,
no,
she's not allowed. Okay.
That's a lot for you. That's a lot.
Yeah,
Taken
no,
in one
no,
sitting.
yeah, I know. It's just so crazy that her dad has a book and she
But
can't
she'll
read it.
begin to ask you questions, and then you'll have
I
to
hope
answer.
so.
She will.
I hope.
Like drugs, alcohol, like, you know,
Yeah.
and a lot of parenting is relating to when you were younger, so they feel relatable, not telling.
Right.
You know what else?
He's like this,
I know,
yeah,
my-
because they like to know you're a human, right?
No,
when you
they
say,
do.
when my kids know I got wasted in grade 8 all the time. They're not. And I'm like, when I was your age, like, I was getting shit-faced. And they're like,
What did you get wasted on in grade 8? What was it?
The beer X and coolers. Remember the
Like eggs?
Molson X, as
Molson
high as we
and
could get it.
Wildcat Strong, the
And
highest alcohol content
Wildcat.
and the cheapest.
Yeah.
I had 2 older brothers, and we used to play Century. You know, Century, a shot a minute for 100
Yeah,
minutes.
that's insane.
And then I'd barf and come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like the little Frank the Tank when I was little.
And now she's a lightweight. I don't know how this happened.
What do you drink now?
Vodka or tequila.
Vodka or tequila?
Do you drink?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, what do you drink?
I'm like a college co-ed. I drink White Claw.
I love
Right?
it. She drinks anything. She's not discriminatory.
My thing was is that I used to drink what's the big bottle of vodka? Is it a 40?
Yeah, or 60 ouncer.
Like whatever one of those is. I would drink one of those in like 2 days.
Whoa.
Right? Easily 2 days.
White Claws are safer.
And then I don't drink alcohol. Like I don't alcohol. I drank cider for a while and beer. I don't drink beer anymore.
No, me neither.
I don't really like white wine with ice is kind of fine in the summer.
Me too.
It would be great
Yeah,
together.
I like white wine with ice.
Yeah, or
but
pink
but
one.
like White Claw, like that sort of. I like the buzz from it, but I don't get shit faced anymore.
I get shit faced off 1 drink or 2.
Yeah.
Shit faced. Like clothes are off. I'm on a table.
Really?
Like shit face. Yeah, she loves it.
Yeah, vodka was like I drink a lot of vodka. It wasn't good.
I guess we could talk forever. Thank you for doing this. It was the most fun ever. And I get your book everywhere. Where can they get it? Just we say it so.
Yeah, Canada, you can buy it in every bookstore or Amazon or Indigo, and in the States, Amazon or BarnesandNoble.com.
Fair.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Oh God,
Thank
that
you
was
so
fun.
much, Roz.
Thank you,
Thank
Roz.
you.